I'm going to invite Arya on stage. We're going to talk about user experience. So user experience is the whole journey, from learning about eSIM to the actual download. But first, Arya, could you present yourself?
Thank you, Mikkel. Hi, everyone. My name is Arya Alatsas. I'm an account director at Make It Clear. We are a user research and user experience design agency based in London.
Thank you. So let's talk a little bit about user experience. At IDEMIA, of course, we're in the business for subscription management. We enable operators and give them the tools to connect the backend system with the end customer. In other words, we help them activate the eSIM. However, technology is not everything. Technology by itself does not provide user experience. And for this, we wanted to, with Make It Clear, to understand the market. We made a massive research. We went to 15 operators to look at their user experience. And with this, I mean in 3 different regions. Okay? These were, there we go. These were the US, this was the UK, and this was Japan. These countries were not selected out of the blue. The reason is the maturity level of eSIM is higher there. Okay, so what was the real user experience? That was the key question. We wanted to review that. We wanted to know the pain points, the errors we were seeing that operators were doing. And more importantly, we wanted to know the best practices. But like any serious study, we did a methodology, right? Can you explain a little bit more about the methodology?
So our study was composed of 3 different stages. We first looked at how eSIMs are promoted, explained, communicated by all operators within the study. How prominent is it? What information is provided? What visual aids? What supporting content might be available? We then had our team of researchers put themselves in the shoes of customers and mapped every single action and touch point that would be required to move from search to purchase to activation. And then finally, we really wanted to bring the voice of the customer into this study. So we selected 1 operator from each country and recruited prospective customers and invited them to undergo that same journey. Please purchase an eSIM, activate it on your phone, and allow us to observe it, and talk to us. Are you encountering any challenges, or are various aspects of the experience totally smooth and totally understood?
So, part of the study, the first step was to review and see what the websites were promoting. Can you highlight a little bit more on this?
So we found that the strongest point with the operators that we looked at was actually within help and support. So detailed frequently asked questions. Some operators offered very helpful comparison tables between physical SIM and eSIM. And also some went a bit further and provided helpful how-tos and videos, for example, explaining what you need to do. But what we did find was that there was very little more in sort of earlier in that experience. What is eSIM? What are the offers that we provide? And really promoting it and really putting it in front of the customer. So again, to Pablo's point that he mentioned, that 11% of customers are eSIM aware through operator channels, that's something we certainly recognize.
Arya, there's probably a discrepancy between the 3 countries. I mean, let's face it, the US is a little bit ahead because they have an eSIM only. What else did you see with this?
Well, information can certainly be found, but it requires search and commitment. And as we know, the more we ask of users or customers, the more likelihood there is that they may lose interest or drop off or go elsewhere. So we only found actually 1 Japanese operator out of the operators that we looked at that specifically signposted from their main navigation to eSIM. We actually found that eSIM tended to be introduced a little bit further on when you were actually looking to purchase a plan or even to actually pay for a plan. So it was happening later on. And so there's certainly opportunities to really put it front and center and to really show that this is an option for people.
Okay, thank you. Let's move to the second topic. So, of the operators reviewed, what about subscriptions? Were they easy to find? Were they illustrative in the websites?
Well, within the US, we've certainly found postpaid, so contract plans, and prepaid. But actually, in the UK and in Japan, we only found options to purchase through a contract, which of course comes with a higher level of requirement on behalf of the customer. Credit checks, eKYC, identification, and so forth. So there were wider offers within the US, but again, that wasn't universal. So of the 7 operators we looked at in the US, not everyone offered prepaid, for example.
Okay, I think with this one we go to the next slide. And clearly the question here is, have operators reached the full journey in regards and milestones to reach this full experience?
Well, this was the area actually which surprised us the most. Of course, search and purchase you would expect to be quite well digitized, but we thought that would also extend all the way to activation. But actually, when we engaged, particularly with the UK operators, 3 out of the 4 didn't allow us to go straight to purchasing an eSIM. They pushed us down a path where we needed to first get a physical SIM and then switch to an eSIM. Now, that does beg the question, if a customer already has connectivity in hand with a physical SIM, probably the most motivated customers would then go that next step to then request a switch to eSIM. And with respect to eSIM activation as well, that isn't always a fully digital experience. So there were operators, for example, that wouldn't send you a QR code digitally. They would actually send that to you physically in the post, which does to some extent contradict some of the sustainability arguments which they are mentioning in their marketing if they're actually going to be sending you something physically. And that's also a potential failure point if that gets lost or if the customer is between addresses and so forth.
So you're mentioning about the activations, and of course that leads us to another question, right? What were the different activation methods operators are using today to activate their end subscribers?
So we saw a real mix. I mean, the vast majority do it via QR code, and that was something which was common across the UK, the US, and Japan. But again, as I mentioned, within the UK, that wasn't always a very digital experience. We even had one operator which offered you to send it to you digitally, but then also offered to send it to you physically if you paid them the postage. Within the US, it was a real mix. You had QR codes, but also push notifications, provided you entered your IMEI number or EID number. So that was something which, particular to the US, they invited customers to provide that information, oftentimes quite early on in the journey, perhaps even before they had really quite selected the plan that they wanted. But the benefit of that was that they could identify the type of device they had. But that being said, there was one operator that only enabled push notifications to Apple iPhone users. If you were a Samsung or a Google Pixel user, they pushed you down the QR code route. And within Japan, we saw all of the above, really. QR codes, push notifications, but also we saw 2 operators that enabled you to activate through their mobile application. We also found, though, within Japan, there was one operator that didn't enable you to do it at all digitally. You had to go visit a local shop.
Okay, good. Then we were talking at the beginning about best practices. Okay, in this regards, to conclude, what high-level recommendations would you give operators?
Sure. So at this stage, we're keeping it quite high level, of course, and for each individual operator across those different phases, search, purchase, and activation, I'm sure we would be able to discuss in more detail particular things that could be adjusted to reduce friction and make things smoother. But at a high level, certainly increasing the visibility of eSIM is a relatively quick win. If you have the technology, and if it's something that you really want to encourage either existing customers or potentially new ones, then just elevating the prominence of that on your operator channels is a very straightforward thing to do. I think also extending the availability of eSIM offers and use cases is certainly, I think, we would imagine something on operators' roadmaps as well. And so extending that to the prepaid market, which, yes, does capture roamers, but could also capture those who are on a budget, perhaps wouldn't be able to satisfy some of the credit checks and so forth, perhaps have sort of a short-term use and don't want to commit to a contract, and that would really help broaden out the offering. And then, of course, developing an end-to-end digital experience. So many of the benefits that have been mentioned about eSIM is about how it can be quick, it's secure, it's sustainable. But if you're going to be introducing physical touch points into the journey and not signpost that to customers, I think that can cause a lot of confusion. And also just having that consistency as well. So over the course of the study, we found that things were changing as we were doing things, and a lot of the time when we were contacting customer service, they weren't really quite up to date with exactly what was happening. So I think that that's certainly something which should certainly be on the roadmap. And finally, with guides for a smoother eSIM activation process, I think there was generally speaking, a lot of an expectation on the customer to really understand eSIM before they really engaged in this process. And of course, we were researchers, so we were committed to follow the whole journey. But customers within our observation sessions did say that, to be perfectly honest with you, we probably would have given up, if we weren't, kind of encouraged or at least helped to navigate some of the pain points. So providing information as and when customers will need it in activation will certainly, I think, help overall.
Okay. Well, thank you. Obviously, 30 minutes does not give to explain everything about eSIM consumer, the trends, and where it's going. Neither does it give time to explain a whole new technology like eSIM IoT. Last but not least, the whole user experience. I mean, this is over a 100-page report where we found out many things. So, in the event that you want more, we're here to serve you. We're also at the meeting rooms, and of course, you can find us in LinkedIn. With that, thank you.